Buongiorno, hello everybody, and welcome to my 10 top tips to buying a home in Italy. My name is Marisa Sherrington, and this is Residenza Toscana and House Hunters Italy. So let's get into it. Right. So you have a dream just like I had a dream, like David had a dream, to buy a home in Italy. So today I want to share with you 10 of my most important tips to preparing yourself for the process of buying a home in Italy. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, so I've put together all of my best ideas, best tips, hints and things that you really must know before you launch yourself into this wonderful dream of buying a property in Italy. Let's get started. Okay, so tip number 1, identify your dream. Now, what I mean by that is I see so many people that say they want to live in Italy, but in fact they don't really know Italy to start with, and they're unsure where to start their search. So the number 1 thing is identify what it is you truly want. What is your dream? What is your Italian dream? Is it to live in a villa lost in the countryside? Is it to live in an apartment in a busy, buzzy city? Is it to have a smaller home that's easy to lock up and leave in a village or a small town? Is it to be sitting overlooking the beautiful Mediterranean Sea? I don't know what your dream is, but you in your heart know for sure. So identify that so that first of all, you can start to really identify what it is that's important to you, where you want to be, what your criteria is for your search. Without that, it makes buying a home in Italy very difficult, just like it would be anywhere in the world. So let's pinpoint that as number 1. Point number 2, and look, this was difficult because I'm trying to put them in order of importance, and number 2 and number 3 to me are equally as important. But I'm going to go with this one first because I find this is probably more problematic in some cases at this point in time. So tip number 2 is, can you buy a house in Italy? Now, I don't mean can you afford to buy a house, because yes, I'm sure you can. I mean, can you buy a house logistically, legally? There are so many laws. In each country, there are different reciprocal laws with Italy that can either allow you to do this or can stop you in your tracks. And many people have been stopped in their tracks this year because of changing international reciprocal laws with Italy. So my number 2 tip definitely is make sure that you can legally make your dream come true. Therefore, this means doing some research yourselves, and please don't listen to what you hear only in Facebook groups or social media groups. They are very informative a lot of the time, but they can also be confusing and misleading. So please, wherever you live in the world, make sure that you contact an authority in immigration, whether that be your local Italian consulate, or whether that be an immigration or legal assistance, a lawyer, someone that definitely knows what the legalities are, and the current legalities, not what it was last year. They change quickly and oftentimes are very difficult to find information just by simply going onto the internet and searching yourself. So attaching yourself to a good notary, for example, where you live. Getting someone that speaks both languages, that knows all the legalities, so that you do not launch yourself into this beautiful dream and then become heartbroken when it can't go through. I'm going to make a couple of examples about this because just in 2023, without any announcement prior, the reciprocal laws change between Australia and Italy, and Canada and Italy, and probably many other countries perhaps that I'm unaware of, but they are the ones that I deal with the most. So therefore, obviously, as far as this kind of thing goes. So with Australia and Canada, the reciprocal laws would change wherein an Australian citizen or a Canadian citizen could no longer at this point in time purchase a house as a normal person, a normal private person in Italy. Now, this was not something that was initiated by Italy. It actually came from the other countries, but because it's a reciprocal law, this is how it ended up, that we could no longer, as Australians or Canadians, purchase properties. Now, where there is a chance for that to be different for you is that, are you someone that can have dual citizenship? Many of my clients found out they could either become an Italian citizen because of heritage through family, or they might also have another European background in their family. For example, you might have British citizenship or be able to. You might have another European citizenship that you're entitled to because of your parents, grandparents, etc. So look into that, because if that's a possibility, you can then purchase your home in Italy because of the reciprocal laws that still are present with all of those other countries. Another fact is that some countries will allow you to purchase in Italy, but they will only allow you to spend a certain amount of money outside of your own country. Now, I came across this with I think it was South Africa recently in the last few months, where there was a top amount of money that you could spend on a home in Italy as an individual. This does also alter if you are buying as a company. Now, companies purchasing in Italy, the laws are totally different. So if you have a registered company or can register a company, or if you have a registered trust, then the laws are very different. And in many cases, you can still purchase through that system. But I'm not going to get into that today because it's very complex, but just to let you know, there are some loopholes. And therefore, again, coming back to the first point I made, make sure you get in touch with people that can help you through these processes because they are quite complex. I hope that one really helps. Point number 3. And as I said, this is equally as important as point number 2, although point number 2 that I made, I think, can stop you in your tracks. Point number 3 is know your budget. Now, many of us get carried away in the wonder of the things we see in Italy. And of course, we dream big, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with dreaming big. I do it every day of my life. But when we're purchasing a property, we really have to remain realistic in the fact that we are spending money overseas. So we want to be realistic, stick to a budget, don't get carried away, don't put yourself into a position of difficulty afterwards. Remember, there'll always be unforeseens, always. I can guarantee it. So therefore, know your budget and stick to it. Remember that I'm going to give you an example. If you were to look for a house for 100,000 euros, that 100,000 euros could be your house budget. But remember, I always say to my clients, please make sure that you have at least 15% additional funds that you know that you can easily spend straight away, because the price of the house that you purchase, there is always going to be at least 10% additional costs at purchase. Now, these will include the governmental taxes that you pay on your purchase as a foreigner. They will include more than likely commissions to agents or a real estate agency, because in most cases, primarily we're buying through an agency. Sometimes it's a private sale, so you might be able to miss out on that. But because most of the homes we tend to find are on real estate sites, it's going to be that there'll be a commission. You may also have to pay for a geometer. Now, in 100% of the cases of homes that I have purchased or that my clients have purchased with my help, we always have a geometer. It is something that legally you do not have to have, but I highly recommend it. It actually makes me cringe when people skip out on having a geometer and then end up with all sorts of problems later on down the track. The geometer is a draftsman in English, but many of them are equally work as architects, or almost different to what we see as an architect, the word maybe in English speaking countries, but they can draw up plans for you for simple renovations. They can do a lot of amazing things, but they also work on behalf of the government as well to a certain extent, where they do searches on the home you're looking at. Now, when I say searches, they're not engineers. So if the house has engineering problems, structural problems, I would also be getting an engineer in to do a check on the property. So that also could be an additional expense you'll have upfront. The geometry can definitely look at the house. If it's a house in good condition, they will look at it, check it for you, check on whether they think rear wiring needs doing, plumbing needs redoing, whether the roof has any issues, whether there's anything obvious to them that needs work. And they also do financial checks on the property to make sure that the cadastral plans, or the plans that the local shire councils hold of your home, are correct and are legal. Because sometimes in Italy you might buy a home where someone has popped on an additional room or an additional bathroom or all sorts of things that are totally illegal and have not been registered. So therefore they need to be destroyed or be registered. And if you buy something with illegal rooms, you could be in a lot of strife later on or lose things that you thought you had. So the geometer will be able to pinpoint that for you at the start. Therefore, I'm saying you'll have the purchase price, you'll have commissions, you'll have taxes, you may have geometry and perhaps engineering fees. It doesn't happen too often when you have that. And of course, you may have a fee if you use a property finder like myself, which is quite minimal really in the grand schemes of things, because that takes a lot of these stresses away from you. So therefore, be prepared that whatever budget you've set yourself, do not think that I've got 100,000 euros to spend and that's what I'm going to look at, a 100,000 euro house. No, in that case, I would be looking at something that is in the 80 to 90,000 euros to make sure that I have enough to get all of those other things paid for when I need to pay them. So watch your budget. My point number 4, and this one kind of involves me quite a lot. So point number 4 is, are you willing to go alone? Can you manage to do this entire thing on your own? Now, many wonderful agents in Italy, and there are some incredible real estate agents, will be able to help you and probably guide you through this really well. But let me warn you straight away, there are equally as many that are going to misguide you, unfortunately. This is just a reality, and it exists all over the world. It's not unique to Italy whatsoever. But because of language barriers, this is where it becomes more complex and people often get caught out. If you find a really good agent that speaks perfect English and that you can build a trust with, that is one thing. But please keep in mind that that doesn't necessarily mean they are a trustworthy agent. They are agents that speaks English, but they are still there to sell you a home. If you decide to employ someone like myself, and there are plenty of other wonderful people out there, I have friends that do similar things to what I do in different parts of Italy, then you are employing someone who is there just for you. I am not a real estate agent. Those other people are not real estate agents. We are here to work on your behalf, to make sure that you have the right property that you are searching for, that you have the right help, that you are within all of your legal rights, that we take stress away from the process. So I highly recommend that you look at using another person to help you, like myself. Remember that agents charge commissions, but be very careful as well, because I, in my experience, have found that many English-speaking agents will charge a higher commission for the fact that they speak your language. You are being overcharged simply for that fact, but you are not getting additional help in many cases. And I know it sounds like I'm generalizing, and I know there'll be plenty of people out there that might look at me and say, oh no, that's not true, I got this and this. And I fully understand that that exists, and I applaud those agents because there are some wonderful ones. But a lot of agents will charge you an additional higher commission just for the fact that they can communicate with you. Now, in Italy, you should expect to pay for most homes a commission rate of, normally these days, anywhere between 2.5 is the very lowest, though it's rare that you'll get that now, except on a very perhaps low priced property. But generally speaking, between 3 and 4%. Now, some agents will charge you 5%. And remember that agents in Italy, they actually earn from the buyer and the seller. So they earn 2 lots of commission at the point of settlement. So therefore, someone that charges 5% to each person is then earning 10% at the end. So when you get a 5% charging agent, to me that is way too much, because I know from experience that people have paid that much to not get additional assistance. They get exactly the same assistance that any other good agent will give you. And in the case, I've done many calculations of using a property finder like myself, and on many occasions, you're actually financially better off having someone like me help you, which costs you less than paying for a high costing agent who actually doesn't do all those little extras for you. So just be aware of that. A lot of people are unaware of what the commissions are. Another thing to take note of is, in fact, a commission is not set in stone. It's not a legal thing that's set in stone. So therefore, if an agent tries to say to you at the beginning, oh, and my commission is 5%, you can also negotiate that. You can. And in the case where I'm involved, if we were using an agency that I felt was asking too much, I can help you negotiate that down. I'm not saying they'll always agree, but in most cases they will. So be careful of that and be aware of that. The other point is that I'd like you to know, and this is a misconception with a lot of people, is that unless you sign an exclusivity with an agency, and be careful not to do it. Be aware of agents that say to you, if you're going to look at properties with me, I'd like you to sign an exclusivity. You don't have to do that, and I would not do it. I have often refused to do this in the past. When someone has asked me, I've just said, no, thank you. I want to be free to go and look where I want with whoever I want. Anyone that does that to you, I disagree with that personally. So you are not obliged to do that. You do not have to sign anything at all with an agent. just for the fact of looking at properties. And also, you are not bound to one agent. Also, another thing with agencies, be aware, many agents leave many listings online for years after they've been sold as clickbait. So many a times people will say to me, "Oh, Marisa, you didn't show me this property." And in fact, no, I didn't, because I was aware that that property had been sold 2 or 3 years ago, but it was online as clickbait. It's a poor practice for agents to be using. I try always to only work with agents who are very upfront, who remove their listings very quickly after they are sold, so I know what I'm dealing with. But unfortunately, that is not across the board. So also be aware of that. So therefore, if, for example, I am helping you to search for your home and you send me a listing because you say, "Oh, I just found this one and I happen to like it and it's with an agency I don't know," I'll always call them to see if it's available first. Up until now, I have to say nearly 100% of the times when people have sent me properties, they've either been sold if they were really great properties, or they have been on the market for a long time because they have something incredibly wrong with them. So again, that's where it's handy to have someone that can help you to sort that through, because otherwise, if you're sitting on the other side of the world, they're difficult things for you to understand. So just beware of how you want to move forward with that, assisted or non-assisted. We're halfway, point number 5. Now this is a heavy one, ladies and gentlemen, and this is going to take a little bit of time to work through. But if you are not interested in knowing about, can I have a mortgage in Italy, then you can skip forward. But this is for all of you that ask me this question very often, and a lot of people want to know about what their rights are in Italy as far as mortgages or bank loans are. So it's a really important topic that I really wanted to attack here a little. Now, obviously I can't get into the finer legalities of this, but I'm going to give you a good overall idea of what you can or can't do potentially. I'm going to have my glasses on during this because I've made some notes, because it is quite complex, so I won't remember it all off by heart. But basically, to start with, the answer is, can I borrow money in Italy? Can I get a mortgage? And the answer is basically yes. But, and there are a lot of buts. So first of all, coming back to the immigration part of things, and when we were talking about passports and legalities, if you have Italian citizenship or EU citizenship, then that does make things easier to obtain a loan. If you are a foreigner, so any other passport that is allowed to purchase in Italy but is not an EU passport, then it is a little bit more difficult, and not all banks will be happy to work with you, okay? But it is still allowable, it is still doable, just a little bit more complex at times. But first of all, the first point I really want to make about this, so apart from that part with the legalities of passports, citizenships, etc., is that a lot of people are mistaken, thinking that they can flip the process and find out about a mortgage first to see what budget they might be able to work with, and then look for properties. That does not at all work in Italy. It may do in other countries. I know in Australia you can go to a bank and say, I'm looking at properties at this range, this is my income, and they will tell you approximately what then you could borrow. That is not the case in Italy, and it's definitely not the case in Italy for a foreigner buying. So what you need to do first is actually find the property that you want to purchase. So if you find the property that you want to purchase, know that as a non-EU person, you are not going to be able to purchase or lend or ask to borrow, let's say, more than 50%. In fact, it would be easier if it was anything between 20 to 40%. So in most cases, I would say you really need to have at least 60% of the purchase price in cash ready to spend before a bank will look at you. Then you must have full proof of income. It cannot be passive income only. It must be that you have income, and you must show proof of a working contract. Or if you are someone with, like myself, who is independent, an entrepreneur, someone that works for themselves, self-employed, then you must have proof of regular income. They will want bank statements. They will want proof of regular income, proof of employment. They will want proof of your residency. So you must be able to show deeds or contracts to where you live in your country. There is a lot of information that you have to prove, which is normal. They are lending to someone who doesn't live in the country and that they don't know a thing about. So again, if you also have credit history, that you can prove that you have a good credit history, all of those things will go to help you when you ask for a loan in Italy. Now, one other point that I'd absolutely like to make is, of course, you're going to say to me, but how? Where do I go, Marisa? Now, number one, if we are dealing through a good, reputable agent, for example, if you came to me for a search and you were dealing with one of my agents, the agents that I collaborate with, who are excellent agents, very ethical, very knowledgeable, have been in the business for a long time, they in turn have brokers, trusted brokers, who can help you look at getting a loan. What they do is they look at the property that you have a contract on. They will then do a research to what bank would lend that kind of money on that kind of property, and they will search out the very best loan at the very best price for you. And fortunately in Italy, the interest rates are lower than in many other countries around the world. So that is when it's excellent to go through a broker. Now, going directly to banks can be very, very complex and very difficult for someone who does not speak the language. So I wouldn't really recommend that, but there are people that manage to do that. If you are happy to take on board doing something like that yourselves, again, that's totally up to you. Now, one more thing that I'm just going to pop on my glasses because I know I've forgotten something that I wanted to tell you that was really important. Yes, right. When I come back to the beginning of this point was I was saying you must already know what property you're buying. In fact, it's not just knowing the property. So for example, I see a house in Florence that I love. I know how much it costs. I then think I can go to a broker and find out how much I can borrow. No, you actually have to have signed the preliminary contract on the purchase of that property before the bank will take any notice of you. They're not interested in maybe if I do. They're only interested in people that have actually already committed themselves to a purchase. So this is where it does become a little bit more difficult because you have to commit yourself to the purchase, sign that preliminary contract, and then find out if you can borrow that money you want. So there are complexities to this. It's not for everyone, and that's where it becomes a little bit more difficult to achieve. But yes, it is doable. I know, and I know people that have done it. So that is that. I hope that helps. I won't go any further because there are all sorts of other complexities and other options. For example, again, a bit like buying properties, again, if you are a company, there are different ways of getting loans in Italy as a registered company. There are lots of different things. But of course, we could go on about that for hours here. So those are the basics that I've given you, and I really hope you find them helpful. Okay, so you've ticked all the other boxes up until now. We're at number 6, point number 6, and you're ready to perhaps take off and go on a trip to Italy to start looking at properties. Before you leave home, and well before you leave home, please do this one thing. Make sure that you apply to your local Italian consulate for your Codice Fiscale. Codice Fiscale. I've written it on the screen for you. Now, this is a fiscal code, as it says. So in other words, it's like having a taxation number or a tax, I'm not sure what you call it, a social security number, perhaps you call it in the United States. And here we call it a tax file number in Australia, for example. So it's a similar thing to that you must have in Italy to purchase anything of any value. In fact, you'll often find even in shops or online in certain shops where you're buying larger items, not just a dress, but for example, recently when I bought all of my bathroom items for my own renovation, I had to also give my Codice Fiscale online for that purchase. So that is something obtainable through your consulate, that you make an online application. It's very simple to do. They will just ask for documentation, for example, your passport when you're traveling to Italy, what it's for. They may ask what it's for, obviously, but it's very, very simple to obtain. However, I know that in some places, in particular in the United States, it has become a process that can take easily 2 weeks to do, easily. So once upon a time, real estate agents in Italy, Italian real estate agents, were able to apply on their foreign clients' behalf in Italy, and were able to do it in a matter of a couple of days. But because of privacy laws and different international laws, that has now been taken away. And therefore it's up to the individual to do it themselves. So I know in Australia, it's quite a quick process, because I've had some of my recent clients do it here and have achieved getting their Codice Fiscali fairly promptly. But I know also in the United States, I've had clients that have had to wait 2 to 3 weeks in really busy city consulates. So please, if you're coming to Italy, or if you're even looking to buy a home in Italy and you want to do it quite rapidly, you're not a slow mover, you're a fast mover, in that case, make sure you get prepared before you leave home to go on your trip, or make sure that you apply now online and get that Codice Fiscale out of the way, so that if you see the bargain of the century or the home of your dreams in Italy and can't wait to purchase, that is not going to hold you up, because you cannot make an offer on a home and make it official without that number. You must already have it. Okay, so point number 6, a very important one. Point number 7. When do I pay my deposit? In the word capara is the word for deposit. So if you hear someone speak of that, it's time to pay the deposit. When do you pay the deposit? So the process is that once you've made a formal offer on a home and it's accepted verbally, you then will sign a preliminary contract, which is a binding contract. Now that is sometimes signed twice or even thrice, 3 times. In the case of some agents I work with, you sign it yourself as the buyer, it is sent to the vendor, they in turn sign to accept your offer, and when it comes back, you in turn sign to say, I have seen that acceptance. So it works differently in different regions, I've noticed, but that is basically how it works. Now, once the preliminary contract is signed by both parties, it is binding, which means you are then obliged to pay the capara or the deposit. but it is a loose law about how much it is. There is no, it's not set in stone in Italy. There's no legality based on you must pay this amount. As in most places, they have come to like a general agreement in most cases that people tend to say the capata is 10%. So for example, a home at 100,000 euros, the capata 10,000 euros. It simplifies things. Also because it means that it's a decent amount for the vendor to see that you are serious. You are giving them upfront already that 10%. So you are serious about purchasing their property, which is really important in Italy. On the other hand, a really important law, and in this case it is a binding law, is that 10% that you've paid, or whatever percentage it is also non-refundable. Once you've paid that and it goes directly to the vendor, once you've paid that, they are bound by law that if they pull out of the sale at any time, they must pay you twice as much back. So if you have paid 10,000 euros, they must pay you 20,000 euros. And you can just imagine that there are not many vendors sitting around that have that money there ready to give to you. So therefore, they do this in the knowledge that, yes, I am bound, I'm not pulling out. It's very rare that this would happen. On the other case, you as the buyer, you are also bound that if you were to pull out, you lose your deposit. You do not pay double, but you lose the deposit you've paid. So that 10,000 euros stays in that person's bank account, and to you it is lost forever. So you must be certain before you go ahead and make a written offer that has been signed by both parties that you are ready, that you have the funds to transfer immediately within a couple of days, let's say, of that happening. Normally, once everything is signed, the agent involved, or if it's a private sale, the person involved will send their banking details to me or to the buyer, if it's you doing it yourself, or to the agent. They then pass it on to you as a buyer. You make a bank transfer if you are overseas. In Italy, it's traditionally done by check, a written check, but most people nowadays don't have that. In Italy, it still exists, but in most of our cases, we're all operating with international bank transfers these days. Or you can even do it via an international transfer app. For example, many of my clients and even ourselves, we often use a different app, and I'm not going to say which one in particular because it's totally up to you what you use, but there are some wonderful transfer apps that save you on certain fees for transferring larger amounts of money. So that needs to be done almost immediately once you have the banking details, and once it is sent, that is it. Everything is then set in stone. Okay, so that is how it happens and when it happens. Right, so we're up to point number 8, and point number 8 is, will I pay house taxes or home taxes? And the answer is yes, unless there's always a but, isn't there? So in Italy, when you first purchase your home, if you purchase as a foreigner, which even though I'm an Italian citizen, I purchased my home as a second home, not as a first home, because I knew that I would not instantly become an Italian resident. So therefore the taxes were higher for me. They were 10% of the cadastral value at the time of purchase. Now I know this sounds complex, and cadastral value is what the government, if you like, the government value of your home is, and that would be based on location and size and different things like that, and it can be totally different to the value you purchase at. Now in most cases it's less, but if it was a massive hotel or palazzo or something where the government value is actually much higher, it could be based on that value. So it's based on the government value, cadastral value. It's usually not that much, to be honest with you, with normal homes. I find it very reasonable in comparison to many other countries around the world. So at time of purchase, that is the tax that you will be paying, and the name of it, if you hear it mentioned, they give it the initials IMU, the IMU tax. Now, if you're a non-resident, you will also pay that tax yearly, and it will be a similar small amount like you paid with your purchase of your home that you'll pay yearly. And that is up to you to make sure that you pay that on time each year. Personally, to take the stress out of things myself, I have a wonderful local commercialista or accountant who handles that for us. And I often suggest that to my clients who are not living full-time in Italy, because it's really hard sometimes to keep a grasp on things that you need to be making payments for. So for a very small annual fee, very, very small and reasonable, I know that my commercialist is going to tell me, Marisa, we are due to pay the IMU. Can I go ahead and do that for you on your behalf? And yes, and it's done, and it's wonderful. So I highly recommend you set up something like that, or if you're happy to do it yourself, absolutely go ahead. But it will be something that you will always pay on a yearly basis unless you become a permanent resident in Italy. And once you are a permanent resident in Italy, you no longer pay house tax, which I think is wonderful. I've never heard of that in Australia, so I think it's a wonderful thing. So that covers home taxes for you. Now, point number 9, I did actually end up covering it a little bit earlier on, but I'll just touch on it once again. I didn't actually mean to cover it earlier on, but I got carried away. So my point number 9 was actually, will I be employing anyone else during the process of house buying? And before, I did mention employing a geometer, an engineer. So therefore, this point was, I highly recommend that you do. The engineer, not so much, although I'm going to give you an anecdotal story about that, unless you feel there could be something really structurally incorrect with the property, or if the geometer, once you have the geometry in, they will suggest it for sure if they think that you need it. Now, this happened to us, so I absolutely understand why this process is so important. If you follow any of my story as far as my renovations with my husband in Italy, you will know that we purchased a small additional part of a building next to us to extend our downstairs area of our current home. When we did that, because it was such a small area, I had the geometer check it. To him physically, everything seemed fine as far as, yes, straight away we knew there were walls to fix and things to do. That was apparent to all of us. But at the time, there was nothing else apparent that looked like it needed engineering. So we didn't do that. So in this case, I'm not putting blame on anybody. It was nothing that any of us would have ever understood that needed to be done. And this is what happens in Italy with very, very old buildings. The village I live in, the buildings date back, it's an Etruscan village, so it dates back to thousands of years ago, but literally our buildings, a lot of them were started in the 1200s, 1300s, medieval times, beyond. So therefore, you don't know what you're going to find under the ground. And because we were working on ground level, all of a sudden we found ancient cisterns, water cisterns under the flooring when we lifted it. We found all sorts of problems. We found that there weren't even correct foundations. They used to just build on the soil. So to bring the home then up to today's standards for seismic reasons, for just water filtration, and that the walls can breathe and you don't have problems with mold and all those different kinds of things. Obviously a lot of work had to be done, and to know that what was going on, we had to employ an engineer. So the engineer came. The cost was not great. So let me just make this clear that these costs are not exorbitant, but they really set your mind at ease, that you know that whatever money you're going to spend in your home, that you're going to be doing it and starting on solid ground, let's say a good foundation, or whatever it is you're doing. In our case, it literally was a good foundation. And I'm so glad that we had the engineer come in, that we found out what we needed to do. Yes, we did spend additional money, and that's where I was talking about before, budget for surprises, because luckily we had a budget set that we could afford to fix those surprises. It has hurt our budget for other things, but we're just going to take our time, because those things are our priority, that our home is safe and sound for hopefully centuries to come, just like it has been up until now, is more important than anything else to us. So now we have a beautiful sound building with everything redone, with ancient systems fixed and everything else. So just remember that those additions, people are not, if they suggest that to you, they are not trying to make you spend money for no reason. It's because it's just so important, and it will protect you down the track from bad surprises, let's say. So that's why I wanted to just touch on that once again. Well, there you have it. We've come to number 10, and number 10 is far less official than the others. I've even gone and got myself a cup of coffee, because this is the fun part. Number 10, my best tip to you is to embrace this beautiful journey that you're just about to go on. There's nothing more wonderful, more spectacular than to live your dream, than to embrace an idea that started as a little seed and has come this far, that now you're ready to launch yourself in this magnificent journey of owning your home in one of the most spectacular countries on the planet, which is Italy. So just embrace that and come with an open mind, embrace the culture, embrace the highs and lows, the things that go slow, that you wish would go faster. It's all part of the journey that you're on. And I always say to people, and I've said this for years, that patience is king. I always say that you must just embrace that sometimes you've just got to take a deep breath and know that it's going to happen. It will happen. And if I'm here to help you along the way, I will make sure it does. But regardless of how your journey goes, on how you choose to live your Italian dream, the point is that it will be fraught with highs and lows. That's just part of it. There will be frustrations. That's just part of it. But as long as you are happy, knowing in the fact that at the end you will have what you've always dreamed of, well then, isn't it worth it? It's so worth it, believe me. So I hope today's 10 points have helped you to make your decision or to understand the process a little bit clearer. If you've enjoyed today, could you please give me a thumbs up? Perhaps leave a comment. And if you have any other questions, of course, I'd be glad to answer them if I can. Also, if you jump onto my website, which is in the description of the video, I'm more than happy for you to book in a 30-minute call with me if you have a question you'd like to ask, or if there's something I can help you with regarding your Italian search. So please feel free to jump on the website. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I'd love you to do that. It helps us so much. It helps me to make more content and hopefully bring more wonderful homes and ideas and knowledge to you. So thank you so much for sitting through this with me. It's been quite a long time coming doing this kind of thing, and I know it's a lot of information, but I think it's essential for your journey to move ahead. So thank you so much. And I will see you next time on Tales from Tuscany or here on Residenza Toscana. And until then, alla prossima. I wish you every joy and keep the dream alive. Until next time. Ciao, grazie.